Hello, Bible readers. The powers of this world seem like they would never or can never weaken. At the height of the Roman Empire, who would have thought that in the grand scheme, it wouldn't be that long before Latin, the language of Rome, would disappear? Or as Hitler expanded the German Reich, a Reich he said would last 1,000 years, that it wouldn't last 10. Like, even the most optimistic opposition probably wouldn't have been that bold. That worldly power shifts, that the greatest, most feared leader can swiftly disappear from the story. That's what today's pivotal moment in the Bible is about, and it centers around the concept of blessing. It happens in Exodus with Pharaoh, and it'll happen again and again and again throughout Scripture all the way into the time of Jesus. At the outset of Exodus, Pharaoh, has all the power, but with each plague, episode after episode exposes Pharaoh's impotence and God's increasing resolve. And then we come to the 10th plague, death for the firstborn, of Pharaoh, of the prisoner, of all livestock. All parts of Pharaoh's system are going to be touched by this plague. They will be assaulted by this plague. How does Exodus describe the response to the 10th plague? Pharaoh and all his officials and all the Egyptians arose in the night, and there was a loud cry. And so we've come full circle. God is here at all in response to the cry of Israel. And now among the Egyptians, there will be a loud cry. So Pharaoh yields and gives what Brueggemann calls a sixfold imperative. Sometimes it's good to just look at the verbs. What are the verbs given to the character? Rise up, Pharaoh says. Go, away. Go, again. Worship God. Take, and be gone. Exclamation point, by the way. Notice that in the midst of these 6 imperatives, Pharaoh speaks the name of the Lord. He says, go worship God. His monopoly on power is finished even according to him. He's admitting it. Brueggemann goes on to say, what astonishes us, though, is that Pharaoh has one more imperative to utter. It is a plural, and that's important. Bless me, Pharaoh says. He's not saying Moses. It's not a singular imperative. Moses, bless me. Or Lord, bless me. Pharaoh is saying, all of you, bless me. The force of this imperative is massive. And then Brueggemann goes on to explain why it's such a big, giant deal that Pharaoh would tell all of Israel to bless him, because it gets at the concept of blessing that Brueggemann wants us to understand. It does show a completely defeated man, right? I mean, can you imagine the most powerful person on earth? Let's say, and I know we're biased because we're Americans, but let's say it's the President of the United States. And I'm not trying to be political about Biden or Trump or whatever. I'm just asking you to imagine the president, whoever it is, somehow defeated by, I think a good analogy would be the Native Americans of the Pine Ridge Reservation, like one of the poorest places in all of North America. Imagine the American president begging them for a blessing because he recognizes he's completely defeated. Like, that's the level of an imbalance of power that begins this narrative, but then by the end of this narrative, it's completely inverted. I mean, Israel, remember, are slaves. They've been treated like a commodity, like machines at best, dehumanized, used completely for profit. They had no tools or weapons to topple Pharaoh. They had no power. But by the end of these plagues, Pharaoh, the exposed false god, is seeking a blessing from all of them. Not just from Moses or from God, but from all the Israelites. So, a word on blessing. Brueggemann says, to bless is to implant the force of life into another person. The entire process of bless assumes that capacity for vitality, life force, can indeed be transferred from one agent to another. So maybe the best example of what this looks like in Scripture is the story of Isaac. Remember, blind and old, and he takes, Jacob steals the firstborn blessing from Esau. The story makes it seem like Isaac can't just take back the blessing from Jacob so that he can give it to Esau, which is what Isaac intended. And that's because of this understanding of blessing that Brueggemann talks about, that I'm talking about now. You can't give life force, capacity for vitality, and then take it back only to give it again to someone else. Like, what's done is done. And here's the other thing about blessing. It's assumed to move from the stronger to the weaker, from the better endowed to the lesser endowed, from the authorized to the unauthorized. Such a capacity to bless, of course, assumes that God would be the only one who can do this. God governs the life force that creates, that makes vitality in the world possible. We see this in the creation narrative. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply," right? They are given the power to be fruitful and multiply from God, who gives the blessing. And it's not just a capacity to be fruitful in ways that bring about children. Blessings are also the kind of thing that allow for the capacity to be economically fruitful. So in Deuteronomy, we hear things like, "The Lord is sure to bless you in the land." So land is a blessing. God will bless you in your work. You'll be productive in your work because you're blessed. It refers to one's abundant flocks as a blessing. You know the famous Aaronic blessing from the book of Numbers. "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace." That's an ancient blessing. In all these uses, blessing is a top-down act from God or from God's human agents. And I think that makes sense to most of us. Pharaoh works like this in Egypt. He has a monopoly on life force, on economic blessings. He could even call upon his henchmen to kill whomever had fallen out of favor. The top-down flow of blessing only works when those below go along with the one who's at the top. Pharaoh's subjects, Egyptians, who enjoy the blessings of his pyramid scheme, they're the ones who are blessed, but they can't bless him back. The flow of blessing in the false god Pharaoh power scheme can only go from the top down. Maybe you could call it a trickle down, if you want. But with the one true God, our God, blessing does not only go from God to God's people. Instead, in the truth, life force, the capacity for abundance and wisdom, when given, also is given back. And this is the amazing thing. The Lord can bless us and keep us, but then we also bless back. The Psalms talks about this a lot. "I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. I will bless the Lord at all times. But we will bless the Lord from this time on and forevermore. All flesh will bless his holy name forever and ever." Solomon says, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who's given rest to his people according to all that he promised." This is a pivotal moment in Scripture because it shows us that our relationship with God is not just top-down stuff. Power for life wells up from below among those who engage on behalf of God's will. Those who are blessed by God and follow this God can bless back. This will happen throughout the Bible, most obviously in the story of Jesus. Remember all the officials listed in the Christmas story in Luke? There's Emperor Tiberius and Pontius Pilate and Herod and Philip and Lysanias and Annas and Caiaphas. They're all named. But who does the word of the Lord come to? John in the wilderness. And it will be John and a bunch of penitent followers there who will seek the Lord, who will bless Jesus back. But even stranger, if you think blessing only comes from the top down, is the story of the Roman centurion. Rome had all the power to bless or kill, or so they claimed, to give life force or to take it, to offer abundance or restrict it. But then a Roman soldier is the one who exposes the lie. Truly, this man was the Son of God. He sees that the power to bless is not within the grasp of empires. Rome can't do what this Jesus has just done. The power to bless instead comes from the relationship, the two-way flow of God blessing us with mercy and us blessing God back by following him, by participating in God's will to live free, which of course means to live free for the neighbor. That's a big learning in that word blessing. As we usually think of a thing that comes from God to us, what if we remembered that we participate in blessing as it is a two-way street? My next post is going to be from just a few verses after today's, Exodus 12, verse 38. The title of that chapter is Multitude Without Pedigree or Genealogy. It's some good news for all the commoners like us. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.